for those people, whatever their idea is like their baby. They are like staying up all night to find a way to make it work. In their free time, do whatever they can to improve on their invention. All that passion, all that energy flows from these people into what they're doing, and that is contagious.
Bastian Rene Huck, welcome to Produce Your Passion.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
No, this is great. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you over the past few months at several networking events, and you're a really cool guy. And you are involved in an industry we have not talked about at all on this program. So I was excited to have you tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. And likewise, it's been a pleasure to meet you at all these events that we ran into each other.
Yeah, from Hadari's events, and then we ran into each other down in Newport. LA's big, but then once you start going to everything, it gets smaller at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does, even though the average person in LA probably spends so much time on the freeways, including me.
This is true. This is very true. So, well, we'll get right into it. So, Bastian, for those that don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, in short words, I'm an ex-Wall Street guy from New York City. I've been there and worked there for almost a decade. And I could gain valuable experience with people that used to work at Lehman. And of course, the company didn't make it, but many of these bright minds, they started their own smaller investment firms after the breakdown of Lehman Brothers. And I happen to be working with some people, a group of 5 people that started their own private equity and venture capital firm in New York City. And I've been a very proud New Yorker until COVID hit, basically. And then I came to Southern California, initially to distant relatives that retired in Palm Springs. And I'm still here. So
you're still here. You're still in LA, and in LA time, that's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years. That's right. And when I came first to Palm Springs, it was very funny because I didn't really know the freeway system, so I just plugged wherever I needed to go into a navigation app, and it just hit the road. And I had no idea where I was passing by, where I was going through, and it was just a very interesting labyrinth in the first couple of months. And the roads were really empty because it was COVID, and a lot of people were scared and stayed at home. But I used the time by myself, obviously, kept safe distance, but by myself in the car, I used the time to get to know the LA area because I was brand new here. I didn't really know anything much. During my New York years, I came to LA for certain summits or conferences, but you know how that goes. You land at LAX, you enter into a cab to go to a conference hotel, and then you spend a couple of days there and you go for a few restaurants and maybe for 1-2 evenings you go out. But you're not really having an awareness in which part of LA you actually went out. So I couldn't even tell when people would ask me, have you been going out in West Hollywood back then? Or have you been going out in Silver Lake? Or, I have absolutely no memory where exactly it was,
I'm smiling and laughing because I remember when I first moved here, my brother knew the area better than I did. We initially moved here together, and when we came, because I've always lived in the San Fernando Valley, when we came and he was showing me the valley, I go, "Where's the Hollywood sign? Where's it at?" He goes, "Dude, this is the valley. That's over the hill." I'm like, "Over the hill? What's that mean?" So to your point, yeah, there's just so much at one time. But then once you get your bearings out here, like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool.
That's right. And I can only say that it is really cool and that it is spread out more. and that you have, for example, the trails in the hills, the hiking trails, and you have things that you do not have in New York City. And that makes it a very interesting city.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you produce your passion story. I know you're in the realm of finance and whatever direction you want to take it. So what is your produce your passion story, and what inspired you to take action on it? Like, what inspired you to go into the finance industry and do what you do?
Well, originally, I was studying high energy physics, which has a lot of math. And what I liked about it was that there are actually mathematical formulas to predict a lot of things in physics, in rocket science. And these formulas, you can tweak them. You can try to come closer to the reality. And then you run an experiment and you see how close you came with your calculations to the results of the actual experiments. And that was really fun. It was a fun time. It was a passionate time. But I was an intern back then, and I dreamt obviously about building my own life, buying a nice car, going to travel the world because I was very interested to, find out more about my roots, fly to Israel, fly to even Asia to, learn about Chinese culture. And so all of these things, they would, take a lot of money eventually. And I knew that if I would be staying a PhD intern in physics, I probably wouldn't be able to do these things. So I heard from a friend come to New York City. They were looking for people that are good in math. You don't need to know anything about the economy. Don't worry. You just need to know math, and then you can come here and they will hire you, and you can tweak your formulas just like you did in the physics lab. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. How much do they pay? And he's like, yeah, 6 figures and something. And I was like, whoa, that's a big step up from being an intern in a physics lab. So I said, okay, let's do it. If I don't like it, I can still, abort that and go back. But I actually got enticed. At the time we were working on transferring risks in the financial world. Now, mathematically, a lot of these things made sense, but then in 2008, basically the input data that we all used to come up with our formulas, basically the input data radically changed because suddenly institutions revalued the real estate assets in the United States, and it came as a shock, and nobody had been able to actually predict that. And we were building financial instruments, certificates that other banks and insurance companies could purchase to assure themselves against a certain financial risk. And other banks would basically print these papers and sell them, take in a premium, and then basically guarantee whatever that certificate said. But then when 2008 came, all the math basically broke down completely. Nothing like that was anticipated in all the simulations that we had run. And obviously the whole thing kind of like broke down, which was also fascinating for me because I learned so much more about how everything is connected in the economy and how obviously normal people get affected down in the end of this. It's like a food chain. If a very big government institution like the Federal Reserve is the largest whale, and then there are other fish that are smaller than the whale, those are the banks and the investment firms. And then, down the food chain at some point are the smaller fish, and when something is not right, then everything, the whole system gets out of whack. And from the whale all the way down the food chain to the little fish, everybody gets affected by a shortage of food or a shortage of, in the financial world, food is basically the access to capital, right? The access to credit and the access to investment money. Because my passion, not only to understand the economy in the process better and the math and what risk actually means, or transferring risk, how you can do it and how you can do it smartly, how you can weigh a chance of investing with the risk that comes along with it and find whatever distribution is right for you. And that changes with your age. If you're young, you can afford to take more financial risk because you have more lifetime remaining to make up if something goes wrong, right? When you get closer to your retirement age, you want to be more conservative with what you do with your financial decisions because you have less time remaining on the planet to make up for something that goes wrong, right? So that is the biggest consideration that I have in mind. But besides of the passion to understand everything, my passion was with people that would take a risk and either invest in a startup alongside with an entrepreneur that would have a great new idea that hasn't been around in the markets yet, and that would make the life of people easier. And the passion that, you know, you get when you work with those entrepreneurs. For those people, you know, whatever their idea is like their baby. They are like staying up all night to find a way to make it work. They, you know, in their free time, do whatever they can to improve on their invention. All that passion, all that energy, you know, flows from these people into what they're doing. And that is contagious. That passion is contagious. And since I'm not that person that, you know, came up with an idea, okay, I do my own company, I do my own project, or I open a business, right? I wanted to work in the financial industry close to those people that would do that, because then I would be part of the team, I would be part of the passion, and I would be, you know, getting that energy, and I would be able to bring my own energy into that. And it is a lot of fun to work in such a passionate environment. And even if something doesn't work out, you stick with that passion. You have all these passionate people around you, all that positive energy. So you're like, heck yeah, let's find another way. And it becomes a lifestyle, basically. And that is actually what kept me going. And the work with those business owners, the people that take a risk, that want to start something new, that made an invention, that is what actually, propels me. That's what lights up my passion. And I would never be able to do my job as a financial advisor or wealth manager if it were not for this part of my job. This is the part that keeps me lit. This is the part that keeps me going.
Man, I love that. So you're literally helping several people produce their passions.
Yeah, and that is a great thing, because it feels, when something works out, and if I could connect the right investor with the project, it is a feeling like on a holiday when people get presents. It's a feeling like on a birthday party when you see that somebody's unpacking their gift, and it feels amazing. It's a wonderful feeling.
I love that. And I definitely want to get back to that, because I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening are going to want to know how best to prepare for the money people, the investors, the people in your industry. But before we get to that, what are the biggest obstacles that you've had to encounter in this field? And the follow-up to that is, how have you overcome it?
Yeah, I would say the biggest obstacle is more on the psychological side of the human condition. It is that people want to be right. It is that people want to elevate or stroke their ego. And it is, yeah, I would say the sometimes difficulty to pivot. Because when you have a great idea and you are so passionate and so convinced about it, and then during your journey, you encounter a person that can help you realize something that is along the lines of what you initially thought, but it's not exactly that. You know, there is a requirement from this other partner that works with you to pivot. You know, there's a requirement to make some alterations, some changes. And I discovered that this is very hard for people because they had their original, they're stuck with their original wants and needs. And if the situation requires to alter, pivot, and change, that's very tough on a human level. And it's also the reason why sometimes negotiations don't have a happy ending. Because people are, you know, people. And sometimes to change or pivot is not what they can take. And then they would rather walk away than do that. And there is never a right or wrong answer, right? So, of course, if somebody has a great idea and wants to put exactly that idea into the world, and then to some extent, it's okay to not change it because an investor wants it to be changed. Because it would be maybe going away from what you wanted to give to the world as a business owner. So there's an understanding on my side for that too. On the other hand, I do have an understanding for the investors because an investor only to a certain extent goes into a project out of their passion for it. To another extent, they're going into the project because they have a goal to make a lot of money. Or at least if it's not a lot of money, then at least make a return that would be higher compared to putting their money to the bank or putting their money into the normal stock market. So that's why it's all about finding a compromise. Pretty much like in a very mature relationship as well. People come together, they might have different goals, different timelines, different likes and different dislikes, and yet they decide to be on the same team. So each of them has to give in a little bit and find a compromise.
So you're like the middleman. You're the middleman between the money and the person with the passion, and sometimes we're not on the same page. So do you have to find yourself going to each of them and till you guys find that middle ground?
Yes, and the lawyers.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm also
Can't forget the lawyers.
The middleman between the lawyers of both sides.
Man,
which is sometimes the hardest part, you know. Because they are not in it for the passion, you know.
Hey, as long as they bill per hour, they're just like, yep, it's we don't care the outcome, but we're getting our here's the bill.
Yeah, and you know, they are getting their self-esteem and their kudos from, you know, throwing another complication in it. As long as they can say, hey, I put this in it in order to provide some extra protection. to the person that I'm representing as an attorney. So for them, it's not about, do we actually get to realize the entire project? No, for them, it's more like, the person that I'm representing in this transaction, did I do the utmost for that person so that that person is optimally protected when it comes to patent rights, royalty rights, risks that might come from the project, like if consumers sue the company, right? Compliance and other things. So they have a different lens on than the actual person that wants to start the business and the investor, because those two actually they have a lot of passion for the project. That's why they come together. That's why they want to actually see this coming through.
Yeah, and lawyers are extremely important, especially when you're dealing with those higher and higher numbers. So I think a lawyer probably they're thinking with no emotion. They're thinking all logic. I know my client's really excited, but they have not thought of X, Y, Z and
Yep,
everything down the
yep.
road. But that's their job, right?
It
So
is.
that's interesting.
It is their
It's
job. Yeah.
um so what, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this, what tips would you have? I'll do a couple of areas for this. Tips for people. Well, so let's start with someone that wants to do what you do. What tips would you have for them to get into the industry that you've gotten into?
Well, I think you have to be extremely curious about the human condition, psychology. You have to be extremely curious about innovation and changing the very fabric of society eventually. A lot of companies that became extremely successful started with a small spark and a small idea. If we remember, Airbnb was a small spark, a small idea to provide some additional options for people that would look for a place to stay. And it changed the very fabric of society, because what was unthinkable earlier in a couple of decades ago, that you would actually invite a stranger to occupy a guest room in your home, uh, today in today's world, through Airbnb, became something acceptable. And people actually started to like that and talk to strangers and get their perspectives, especially when they're from other countries, and friendships started to form just through that idea. And on the financial side, that was obviously a unicorn that formed with trillions of dollars of created value for people and for the company itself. And that is exactly what is fascinating. So people need to be open to any new idea that could be out there, and they need to develop a nose for ideas that are having great potential, and they need to develop a nose for the human condition in terms of what are people like that I can work with. So if somebody has an amazing idea, but the person is very difficult to deal with, then I need to understand that relatively early, because if I do not get this early on, then I will put a lot of work hours, weeks and months into this project. And at the end, turns out the person is on a human condition so complicated and difficult to deal with that no deal ever gets closed with any investor or any person, like a bank or even a government grant administrator. So the thing doesn't move forward. And I have seen that too. I have seen a great idea that uh, basically is standing still because the inventor is a very difficult person to deal with.
That's really interesting, and that's a perfect segue to the other question I had. So, what tips would you have for that entrepreneur, for that inventor, for that aspiring business owner that comes to somebody like you? What advice do you have to them so they can present in the best way possible? What things should they have? What ducks should they have in a row? And I think you already named one. Like, don't be, don't go crazy on people. I think that's a
Yeah,
given because it makes sense. So, is there any other advice for those people that are going to try to go the investor route for their idea and passion?
yeah, be very open. Be generous too. I know it's your idea. I know you want to give as little as possible away to an investor or to even a consultant like me. But, you need to understand that it is a team effort because you, as the inventor, you are not experienced to create the best financial models for the investment world. You're not experienced to create the best financial structuring and tax optimization structuring. Uh, and even if you have that knowledge, then you should rather, you know, go along with a team that is taking care of these other things so that you can focus on the core of your business and on, the core, which is your potential customers. You need to spend your time there. And you need to be open for all these other functions that come along with realizing a project. Other functions could involve more detailed product design, advertisement, campaigning, marketing functions, the finance function, the bookkeeping function, the tax function. You need to be open to let other people help you with all these other functions that are not core. And you need to be generous enough to provide for all these other people in the team to get a participation that is fair considering what their contribution is. So you cannot, as an entrepreneur, think that you have this great idea and you get some money and you take care of your customers, but for all these functions that I just talked about, you're only willing to pay the minimum wage to these other team members that would take care of all these things. That's not working because the people won't have any motivation to do a great job for you if you're not generous, if you're not willing to actually give the most important key people that do all these other important functions. You have to give them a fair compensation. You have to be willing to give potentially also not only a salary, but also some employee shares. Because those people that start out with you when you start in the garage or when you are still small, those people are your core. Those people are potentially the people that shape this endeavor really substantially together with you. And those people are involved in hiring other people underneath them when you grow. So then these people become your future leaders of all of these functions. So you got to see it as a team effort, and you got to be generous to go along and motivate the people according to their contribution, basically. That is a very important tip. And be open to things that change in the world. If, for example, I don't know what example can I give, but if you have the idea to build a network of charging stations for electrical vehicles, and you have calculated with the amount of electrical vehicles, if you start in California, will rapidly increase because California had this law that no cars and trucks with regular engines are allowed to be sold any longer from a certain date in the future. So this is something that you use, like, oh, they can no longer sell regular cars and trucks from a certain point in the future because it's California law. And now I do this startup and I provide for all these charging stations for electrical cars and trucks. But then, unfortunately, the federal government is canceling this law that California wants to do. So it's now no longer in place, I think, or they're trying to get rid of it. So the speed with which electrical gas stations will, or charging stations will develop is probably now going ahead slower. So now you need to be open to maybe pivot your business. So instead of just providing some fully automated charging stations for electrical vehicles, maybe now you need to pivot and you need to create an app that has some AI functionality that helps people plan their routes. And if you have a premium function in the app, you can reserve spots at the charging station for a longer time or something. Therefore, you pay a subscription fee. So you might need to alter and change and pivot because something that was out of your control changed. That California law changed, basically. And that had a huge impact on what you wanted to do and on the projected growth. So now you have to become resourceful and see, what else can I do? What other services could I add? Can I maybe partner with a restaurant chain so that I can reduce the cost of putting up my electrical vehicle charging stations? If I could partner with a chain restaurant and I could use their property to put the charging station up nationwide, can I save some money if I do that, right? Well, maybe I have to give the owners of that chain restaurant or franchise some profit sharing of what I do, and that will reduce what potentially I can make out of this whole idea. But, well, that happens, and you need to be open. So do you want to move forward and reach growth and put your idea out into the nation relatively quickly? In other words, do you want to see it become reality? Or do you want to hold on to, oh, I want the majority share of the profit out of my idea, right? And therefore I will grow much slower and maybe I won't even make it, right?
Thank you for all. That was a brilliant breakdown. And the quote that comes to my mind, I had someone tell me once, 100% of nothing is nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it reminds me. So it's the artist, especially the artist, but yeah, startup founders, when it's your baby, it is hard to let that go and to see other people do what they can. But I love how you just ended that. Is like, do you actually want to see this thing hit reality, or do you just want to keep it in your head because you quote unquote own it all at the same time? So there's a lot of truth.
Yep.
A lot of wisdom in what you just.
Yeah, that's right. And to go back to, if you want to become somebody that is the middleman, then you have to ask yourself, are you having nerves like steel wire? Because you're going to need them.
Probably a lot of patience too, I'm guessing.
A lot of patience too, yeah. Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a lot of egos, and I mean that in a positive sense, but you're dealing with a lot of different types of personalities and things like that. So I could see how patience and back to your human psychology points, like just understanding humans is so important for what you do.
It is super important. And for the longest time, I had a little bit neglected that part because I was, coming from somebody that studied physics, I was focusing on the numbers, on the facts. And I basically ran against other people. And I was like, well, look at the numbers, look at the facts. And then, or things changed. And then what I had said based on numbers didn't hold up. And people were like, what the hell? But you said this and you showed me these numbers, and now you say that's not holding true anymore. And yeah, so I learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I think that's an interesting uh, line of work, if you want so, because you need to be a very much generalist person. Um, you can help a business owner that starts in the food and beverage industry. You can help a business owner that is doing a skincare cream. You can basically do all kinds of things, and you need to be able to pivot or be interested in all kinds of technologies or potential industry sectors that you would like to work in.
I was going to say your line of work has to keep things very interesting because you're probably constantly hearing about new businesses and ideas from all different types of industries.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, Bastian, this has been a true treat, man. Like this is I feel like this is going to be the podcast, like myself included. A lot of the passion producers have to hear in a good way, because you are right. I think there's a middle ground, right? Like how do you keep the integrity of what it is that you're trying to do, but at the same time being open-minded enough and being able to let go of some control so you can get the right team who can make it happen.
Right. And you always need to be curious to learn about not only technical things, products, or keep up to speed with what's happening in the country, what's happening in surveys, with what are the needs and wants of the people in general. So, market trends in society, uh, trends in different groups of the population, the fabric of the population when it shifts and changes. You need to develop an interest for all of these things and try to be on the pulse of everything. And that can, on the one side, feel very overwhelming, but on the other side, it's also very interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Bastian, thank you so much. We'll get a last word here and before we go, but before we do, how can people get a hold of you, look you up online if they want to work with you, learn more about what you do? Where are the best places for people to go?
Well, you Google my first name, my middle name, and my last name, Bastian Rene Huck, and then you find me most likely pretty much on top in Google. And you click on one of these links and find a way there to reach out to me with my phone number or my email. And if it says satellite engineer, that's not me, that's the other Bastian Huck that is out there.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And final word here. I thought maybe what should we be looking out for in the markets in the coming years? Is there any particular area people should be looking to invest in, to start a business in? You're just a pure fun, from your viewpoint, what you think?
Well, I believe that we will be going stronger into automation. So even when we get more production to happen again in the United States of America or in Canada or in Latin America as well, automation will be key. So if you are a person that is slightly interested in new technologies, my advice would be to find certain companies that provide or cover certain areas of new technologies, and you learn about that. You learn about what these companies are doing, and you start with your imagination to think about what would the world look like in 15 years from today, in 30 years from today, and can I see that this company could, provide a help, an automation that could be useful for a lot of people. A very good example is the company Grammarly. They basically help people to, spell check their emails. And nowadays, we have already a competitor that is free. So you also need to think about how is a idea or a company, what they're doing, how easy is it to copy that for somebody else, and or for another company to become the competitor of this company. How far ahead is a company? Is a company market leader? Are they really far ahead? Is it hard to replicate? If all of these things are relatively true, and you can imagine that what this company is doing or providing is something that would help a lot of people, and it would be an integral part like 15 years from today or 30 years from today, if you can imagine all of that, then that's a company that you can invest in. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could also be a company from the food and beverage industry. When you believe that people will be more health conscious, for example, they will tend to purchase certain products, and you believe that, and you check whether the trend, what you believe, is also seen, statistically speaking, with other groups in society, and there's an upwards trend, you can basically fact check yourself nowadays very easily. When you use AI, when you go online, when you do your research. And that way you can basically fact check your own investment ideas and see if you are on an upward trend. If that is the case, then yeah, that would be a good investment.
Awesome. Well, Bastian, you gave us a lot of gold tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I look forward to seeing you at future events here. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much for coming on. If you could just hang around just for a second here, but Bastian, thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Sam. Thank you for having me, and I hope I could provide some valuable insights for a lot of people tonight.
You most definitely did. See you soon, my friend.
Thank you so much. See you as well. You have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in. To learn more, go to produceyourpassion.com.